Spending a year alone on a deserted island is many people's idea of a dream come true. But what's the reality? Bob Kull spent 12 months on a stormy, rocky island off the coast of Chile as part of his PhD at the University of British Columbia. With only some tarpaulin for shelter, some books for entertainment, and an epileptic cat for company, it was hardly Temptation Island. But Bob Kull did it all for science. He joins me now from Vancouver. Hi there, Bob.
Hi, how are you?
Good. It sounds like a very unusual PhD. Can you tell me what the scientific aims of the project were?
I prefer to say just the general aims. Science was a part of it. It's the exploration of our cultural minds, our relationship with the non-human world. So we live usually in a mindset that's constrained by thinking and language. And I was really interested in how that relates to beyond that, to a transformation of consciousness that can move beyond that. In previous retreats, I've explored those shifts, and they continue to fascinate me. In particular, I went to explore in a lived experience way how I might catalyze those shifts in myself and perhaps be able to share that with other people.
Now, I know we've got some video footage that people shot of you towards the end of your stay. Can you give me a sense of what your typical day was like?
It depended on when. At first, the first 3 or 4 months was pretty work-oriented. I came to this island that was, I wouldn't say a hostile climate, but it was very difficult. So I moved into a tent and started building a shelter and cleared the beach to drag the boat up and built an outhouse and got my solar panels and wind generators set up and started getting in firewood. So it was a lot of work to begin with. Then it moved more, it's not a linear process, it's certainly cyclic, but moved more to reading, spending more time, quiet time, a lot of introspection. And then as time went by, meditation became a larger and larger part of my day, so that I moved beyond thinking and writing. I stopped writing, I stopped reading, and I spent just lots and lots of time listening to the sea and the rain and the wind and allowing the elements to carve me and shape me and become my teachers.
So how did your state of mind then change over the 12 months?
It came and went. My dream when I went is that after 2 or 3 months I would have become integrated with the non-human world and just feel like a part of the cosmos. There were times of that, but the whole time was cycling through that there would be days of feeling really up, and not up so much as expansive into that spaciousness of solitude. And the next day I might be filled with anger and anxiety and dread and fear, in the sense that the natural world, the non-human world, was truly out to get me, to annihilate me.
Now, I know you had a cat for company, but how did you cope with the solitude?
When the shift happens, we tend to live in a sense of isolation, that I'm a small, isolated individual and disconnected from the world around. And the shift I've been speaking of, the transformation, is a move to feeling deeply embedded in the flow of life of the world, of being fully alive in a living world. And so there is no sense of loneliness. The trees, the animals, the rocks, the sky, everything is alive, and there's a sense of spirit. And so there is no sense of being alone. There's the whole world outside and within. It's quite wonderful.
You mentioned the wind as being one of your bitter enemies. What was the worst time on the island for you?
There were different kinds of worst times. Physically, I fell and damaged rotator cuff muscles in both shoulders. That was hard. A lot of pain for months afterwards. I had to do a lot of exercises to keep functioning. A tooth went south. I had to pull a tooth. That was hard. It was really hard one night while I was still living in the tent and the boat was out, tied up in the ocean still. The wind shifted to the southeast, a weird direction, and actually flipped my boat and drowned both outboard motors in salt water. That was a real hard time. I thought I was going to be stuck on this little island with no sun for a year and no way to explore the region. Psychologically, what was really hard is, as the months went by and my expectations of what I wanted and expected to get were not being fulfilled on a personal and an academic scientific level. I had expectations of the answer I was going to go get, and it wasn't happening.
So after 12 months on the island, Bob, do you think you can sum up for me what you think your contribution to science has been?
It's difficult because I'm not sure what science is anymore. I think more in terms of a contribution to the community. I'm sure there are some people that know what science is that think the best contribution I've made is to be a bad example of how not to do science. But I think that what I'm trying to do is to act as a sort of mirror on our minds, our thinking minds, the way we perceive and live in the world from outside the cultural matrix. That in terms of environmentalism, we know intellectually we're part of the natural world, the non-human world, but we don't experience it. And so opening a space to explore the sacredness of all lives and ourselves in it feels to me like an important part of our environmental movement.
Well, welcome back to Canada, Bob.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I've been speaking to Bob Kull, a PhD student from the University of British Columbia, and he joined me from Vancouver.